Who was Ahmed Yassin? Sheikh Ahmed Yassin was born in 1936 in Al-Jura, a Palestinian village that no longer exists. His birthplace was bulldozed, along with nearly 500 other Palestinian towns and villages in 1948, following the occupation of Palestine. Black small square his life young Ahmed Yassin accompanied his family and tens of thousands of refugees to the Gaza Strip, a place that later became synonymous with dispossession, poverty and resistance. The early years of his life were once again impeded, this time by an injury he sustained while playing sports at the age of 12. It left him quadriplegic and forced to use a wheelchair for life. Despite his paralysis, Yassin left Gaza to Egypt in 1959 where he spent a year studying in Ain Shams University. Forced to cut short his academic career due to a lack of funds, he returned to Gaza. However, Yassin returned home deeply influenced by Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, a movement that inspired the ideological framework of the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, established by Yassin many years later. He worked as a teacher of Arabic and Islamic studies, gaining the reputation of being one of the Strip's most respected preachers. In 1983, he was arrested by the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza and was sentenced to 13 years in prison for allegedly forming an underground organization and possessing weapons. He was released 2 years later as part of a prisoner swap. In 1987, he founded Hamas. He was at the time the Gaza-based leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, says the movement's official website, hamasonline.com. He was again arrested and sentenced to 40 years in prison in 1989, this time charged with inciting violence and ordering the killing of an Israeli soldier. The father of 11 children spent 8 years in prison, aided by 2 of his sons who volunteered to accompany their quadriplegic father in his cell. Released in 1997 after a deal forged between Israel and King Hussein of Jordan, Yassin's health worsened. In prison, he had lost vision in his right eye and suffered from respiratory diseases and hearing loss. Yassin was used a wheelchair for most of his life during the second uprising, Al-Aqsa Intifada, which began in September 2000. Yassin proposed several ceasefire initiatives with Israel, granted that the latter would withdraw from the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem and cease assassinating Palestinian activists. Strongly defended the Palestinian people's right to resist the occupation and often criticized the Palestinian Authority for discounting the armed resistance option in its dealings with Israel. On his death, the Israeli government of Prime Minister Ariel Sharon had openly called for Sheikh Yassin's assassination. The Hamas leader was killed after praying in a mosque on September 6, 2003. Yassin survived an attempt on his life when an Israeli F-16 fighter jet fired several missiles at a home in Gaza City. The ailing resistance leader was slightly wounded. Finally, Israel managed to assassinate him on March 22, 2004, along with 9 other people. His wheelchair was twisted. 2 or 3 people were lying next to him on the ground, said a taxi driver describing the bloody scene in Gaza. The most prominent Palestinian leader to be assassinated by Israel was targeted while on his way out of a Gaza mosque after the early morning prayer. The attack was carried out by Israeli helicopters that struck him along with several others. The killing sparked an array of responses worldwide.